Melinda, who was only a teenager, discovered she was pregnant. She didn't know what to do. Her mind was blank and she could only rush and tell her boyfriend Joseph the news. She ran as fast as her legs could take her. She reached Joseph's house and knocked on the door. Joseph saw her sweating and heart panting. She was out of breath. He welcomed her and offered a glass of water. Once she was relaxed, she told Joseph, "We need to talk about something," and he listened attentively to what she wanted to say.
I'm pregnant.
She stammered.
Joseph, I am pregnant.
He stood up and stared at her.
What did you say? That you're pregnant? Who? How? When did you get pregnant?
She was shocked by Joseph's reaction.
Of course, I have never slept with any man. You took my innocence, my virginity.
Joseph got angry and told her to find the man responsible for her pregnancy. He even accused her that she was cheap and a whore. These words hurt Melinda so much. The man she thought he loved was a beast, and she could not recognize him anymore. Joseph took Melinda's hand, threw her out of his house, and told her never again to set foot there. Melinda couldn't believe her heart. The man she thought was a stranger. She went home, took a rope, and went behind the house to find a tree. She tied the rope to the tree. She wrote about suicide and the reason behind it. Her friend Caro came to visit and called her from the house, but she didn't respond. She went behind the house and found her friend tying a rope around her neck. Melinda called angrily,
What are you trying to do? You want to kill yourself and leave me and your parents. What's wrong with you?
she said as she approached her best friend, removed the rope from her and slapped her to return her senses. Melinda cried as she hugged her friend tightly.
I am sorry.
Those are the words she could utter. As she calmed, Caro asked,
What could be the problem?
She looked at Caro and said,
I'm pregnant.
Caro was surprised.
Who is the father?
She asked.
It's Joseph's. You mean Joseph, the youth leader?
Melinda nodded. Caro said,
Killing yourself and the baby is not the solution. You need to tell your parents about it. They will understand.
Melinda replied,
I can't. You know my parents are the church's deacons, and I don't want to see the disappointment on their faces. When they give a sermon, they give examples by using me to talk to the congregation and the youths.
But Caro interrupted her.
You have to try to talk to them.
Melinda thought about it and decided to speak to her parents. On Sunday afternoon, after church, the topic was about forgiveness. She decided to tell her parents.
Dad and Mom, we need to talk.
She was nervous and didn't know how to start.
Dad, Mom, I am sorry.
Mr. and Mrs. Paul looked at each other, wondering what could be wrong, and her mum asked,
What is the matter? Mom, I'm pregnant.
and they laughed, thinking it was a joke. Melinda repeated.
I said, I am pregnant.
When they heard the second time, they stood with anger on their faces.
What did you say? Pregnant? Who is the man responsible? It's Joseph.
Do you mean the youth leader?
Melinda nodded. Mr. and Mrs. Paul took Melinda's hand, got in the car and drove to Joseph's house. They found Joseph watching a football game.
You. Young man. Are you responsible for my daughter's pregnancy?
Mr. Paul asked. Joseph stood immediately.
You mean Melinda is pregnant? Who is the father?
Asked Joseph, pretending he didn't know anything. Mrs. Paul came forward and slapped Joseph.
We want to know who is responsible for the pregnancy.
Joseph took the Bible and swore he wasn't responsible for her, and even vowed that if it was true, let him not bear children with any woman. Melinda knelt to ask Joseph to speak the truth with tears rolling down her cheeks.
I am not the father.
Her parents took her and went home. They were furious. Mr. Paul asked her again.
Who is responsible for your pregnancy?
Dad, I told you everything. It's Joseph.
If you will not tell us, please pack your belongings and leave the house. Our reputation matters a lot. We can't have you here and disown you. Melinda took her belongings and left the house. She went to her best friend Coro, who welcomed her with open hands. Melinda's parents didn't like Coro since they thought she was a bad influence on their daughter. They had been friends since a younger age and went to the same school until Coro's parents passed. So it was difficult for her to adjust her school fees. Hence, she dropped out of school and took different jobs to survive. Coro told Melinda she could stay as long as she wanted. She was shown her room and rested. After a few weeks, Coro asked Melinda to go back to school. Melinda said to Coro,
I can't go. My parents have stopped paying my school fees. How will I manage to pay? I will pay, and you need not worry.
She hugged her best friend and thanked her. The next day, Melinda went to school. She worked extra hard in her studies since she was in her last term in secondary school. Coro supported Melinda in her studies and also in maternity clinics. Melinda sat for her final exams. As she was done, her water broke, and she was rushed to the hospital. She was blessed to have a bouncing baby boy she named Ryan. She was overjoyed and full of happiness. After 1 month, her exam results were out and she passed as a top student. She always wanted to be a lawyer, but because she did not want to burden her friend Coro with it, she was in deep thought and didn't realize her friend was calling. She came closer to her and asked,
What's bothering you?
Melinda explained to her,
I can't afford money for university and also for taking care of Ryan since the job you have pays little.
Coro smiled and told her she would take of it and she didn't need to worry. Melinda was over the moon. She received a call that they were ready to give her a scholarship since she did excellent in her exams. That was the best news they received. Melinda was blessed to have 2 people in her life, and she could also attend one of the best prestigious universities she could enroll in. Melinda ensured she was the best in her studies to make a name out of her life. A few years passed, then Melinda finished law school. Her friend Coro was also blessed to get married to a handsome medical doctor. Melinda was given the best law firm job and salary so that she could care for her son. Ryan grew up to be the best student. He was bright, intelligent, lovely, respectful, and obedient, which the community and teacher loved about him. In everything Ryan does or touches, he is talented and blessed. He could help anyone in need, whether they were sick and needed to be taken to the hospital or doing volunteer work in the community. He always wanted to be a surgeon so he could save more lives. Ryan was able to finish high school and even managed to get the best grades. He was able to get into a medical university. He worked hard, and during his free time from university, he volunteered in a hospital. He was passionate and dedicated to his work, and the hospital loved him. As for Joseph, he got married, and it has been 3 years since he couldn't have his children. His wife, Rachel, tried everything so they could have children. Visited a gynecologist and did IVF, but it all failed. This tired down his family, and all the time they would get into arguments and fights. One night, Rachel had a dream she was trying to save his husband from drowning. An older man appeared to her. Tell your husband to tell the truth or otherwise, both of you are going to drown. She woke up from the dream all sweating, woke up Joseph and told him about the dream. He pretended he didn't know anything and said it was just a dream. Rachel couldn't take it anymore and decided to divorce Joseph. Joseph decided to visit Melinda's parents and ask for forgiveness.
Sir, madam, I need to confess something.
They listened attentively.
Some years ago, I swore that I wasn't responsible for your daughter's pregnancy. I lied, I am the father of the child, and to be honest, I haven't had peace or children. I need your forgiveness.
Mr. Paul said in a hoarse voice.
We forgive, but Melinda needs to hear this.
They tried to find her whereabouts, but they didn't know. Melinda's parents went through a lot since they were replaced at church from a deacon position to be given to the younger generation, and it's been hard for them. Joseph left to find Melinda, but it was all in vain. As for Ryan, he finished medical school, attended an internship, and became one of the residents in one of the best hospitals. He was a talented and famous neurosurgeon and even challenged other surgeons. He was able to operate one of the most complex surgeries, the separation of twins. By this he was all over the news at such a young age. He kept doing his best and had faith in God. One day Joseph's friend had a brain tumor and was referred to St. John's Hospital. They gave him the best surgeon, that's Ryan. He decided to review and operate him. That evening, Melinda came to visit Ryan. It had been a long since they caught up due to work, and they laughed as they chatted. Joseph came to visit his friend at the hospital. That's when luck was on his side, and he met Melinda. He came closer and called.
Melinda, is that you? She looked back and was shocked to see him giving a fake smile. Joseph knelt.
I am sorry, Melinda, for all the pain I caused you. You didn't deserve how I treated and abandoned you when you needed me. I am genuinely sorry. Please find in your heart to forgive.
Tears rolled down. Ryan asked.
Mom, what was happening?
When Joseph heard him calling Melinda mom, he hugged him.
I am your father.
He had mixed feelings and heartbeats to hear and see his father. Melinda and Ryan forgave him, and Joseph informed Melinda's parents about her whereabouts. Mr. and Mrs. Paul visited them and were shocked by the luxurious cars and house. They were proud of their daughter's achievements. Melinda and Ryan welcomed and forgave them. Ryan was excited that he had his grandparents. As for Joseph, he paid for his sins and was given a second chance to make up for his son.
The end.